Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of the Create a Life You Love video podcast, where we get to connect with people from all over the world to share tips and strategies that will help you on your journey. So I'm your host, Chantal Cox. I'm an author and transformation coach who uses the power of the NeuroCoaching model to help high-achieving, motivated women to rediscover their passion and purpose in life so that they can step into their potential and create a life that they love. So I'm super excited to be here tonight with Kandis with a K. Kandis is an emerging writer and director living in LA. She recently directed a short psychological drama called Edible, and she hopes that her story will help others create a life they love. So welcome, Kandis. How are you doing this evening?
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I am having a super fabulous day. I've gotten to do all kinds of things that I love to do, and it's just really lit me up, and I'm so excited to be here with you tonight.
Awesome.
Yeah. So you are currently in LA, yeah?
Yes.
That's awesome. So tell me about what is going on with COVID in LA, because I'm in Kansas. So
Well, I imagine it's probably pretty similar to Kansas in that, like in everywhere across America where the numbers are just going up. But it's particularly alarming here because we had got them down, like really, we were doing really good. And then all of a sudden, the numbers just went skyrocketing up. And I was actually out of town for the holiday. And I guess everyone was like saying, don't travel, it's going to be really like the iffiest time. But I feel like the danger for me was coming back to LA where the numbers are breaking all the records. So it's been a little bit challenging. We just got issued another lockdown. So we're all on a stay-at-home order right now.
no. Oh,
Yeah.
don't tell me that.
I know it's really crazy. But I think a place like Kansas is kind of like Atlanta where they won't issue a lockdown and they just let people fend for themselves out in the streets.
Oh, well, we did lock down in the spring, and everything's political, and I'll keep my opinions to myself, but I think there would be a revulsion, like if they tried to completely shut it down again. They are finally like requiring masks, so that's a good thing.
Yes.
Science, but whatever.
Right.
So yeah, it's just always interesting to see kind of where different people are at and what's happening in their neck of the woods. Okay, so let's dive in. Tell us a little bit about you and your journey, how you created a life that you love.
I love the name of this, by the way, creating a life that you love, because I think a lot of people don't think about it that way. They often think that they have to, deal with whatever's been given to them. And to a certain extent, that's true, right? Like, so I'm from New York originally, born as an only child, but into a large family. And then my family ended up moving to Georgia when I was 11 years old. So I went to, that was a very jarring shift in my life at a really kind of vulnerable time at 11. And went to high school in Georgia and went to undergrad in Georgia, actually. And to that point, I'm kind of grateful for the two backgrounds, growing up in New York and then getting to the rural South. It kind of like softens the harshness of a New York style. So I was grateful for that. And then after undergrad, I studied creative writing in undergrad. After bouncing around to doing all the things they tell you not to, right? Like I was an accounting major upon enrolling, and then I switched to political science, and then I switched back to accounting and all of this stuff, and ended up with a degree in creative writing. And I thought, I really want to reach more people. I want people to hear what I have to say. So I decided to go to film school, and that brought me to Philadelphia, which byproduct brought me to the show in a way. So yeah, I did film school and I graduated in 2014, and then I moved to LA soon after that, kind of because it was that idea of like, what do I want to do now? I could have stayed in Philadelphia and tried to find, work in film, which is kind of challenging. Maybe in New York there's a little bit, but it's not kind of a mecca for film. And then I thought, oh, I can go back to Georgia where they are doing a lot of productions. But I realized that if you wanted to be kind of one of the decision makers, you had to be in LA, because that's where all the studios and all the above the line things were happening. And that's where they were drawing the writers from. And that's where they were drawing all the creative stuff from. And almost immediately after moving to LA, I could feel like the energy, the creative energy is really palpable here. Similar to how in Philadelphia, there's kind of like a haunted energy, like kind of ghostly in a way. Yeah, it's like, it just is very spiritual. I'll say that. I won't say it's haunted, but there's a very deep spiritual energy on the streets of Philadelphia. And here it's definitely like a big creative energy. Like everyone's doing something. Everyone's trying to, tell their story in some way. It's kind of the place where all the dreams come, to like achieve themselves. So like I think it's like the ultimate create the life that you love, right? We have great weather. I love going to the beach. I love my cats. As you can see, I have a cat here on the cat tree. Yeah, so that was my, process of like, what do I want to do? And in that, I consulted with tarot, because I'm also a tarot reader / part-time psychic. So I, use that to kind of get in touch with where I should be in a way too, like what I was being called to do. Because that's kind of another thing that I really believe in, is that it's not just about necessarily what I want to do. Like, I think that thinking kind of gets you so far. Like, you have to have that kind of drive, but at the same time, there is, at least to me, a path that we're all born to kind of walk down. So it's really about tuning into that path, and how can you listen and be open to what you were put here to do, what your purpose is. Like you're saying, like letting people connect with their purpose. I think that is a big thing for me as well.
That's awesome. And that segues so nicely to our next topic of conversation is, kind of what tips do you have for others on the journey to create a life that they love? And I know you have specific ones, but I would like to dive in a little bit to that. So you chose kind of tarot, and that was a big piece of your journey to figure out your purpose. So I've not ever really been exposed to much of that. So I'm just curious, was that something that you were fairly familiar with and you leaned into it, or was it brand new in your world?
It was very new. It was something that I think all humans innately are intuitive beings, right? We all have like a power within us, and we call it like our gut, that kind of idea. And I think from a young age, I was a very active dreamer. So I would have a lot of kind of prophetic dreams, but I never really had language for it, or a way to kind of engage it, until I moved to Philadelphia, which, like I said, is such a spiritual place, and you can kind of feel that energy on the streets. And I think I got my tarot read at a party in Philadelphia, and the next day I went out and got a tarot deck, and I was like obsessed with it. And, I've got, 6 or 7 decks now. And that was just a way for me to kind of connect with my intuition on a more tangible level, because otherwise it was just a lot of dreams for me, which are great. Like, I love my dreams. I love getting that insight from like the collective conscious. But I think tarot is really useful, like for people who maybe find that harder to grasp, like, so they can say, okay, this means this. And so this symbolism is here, and I can kind of point to it and kind of reference it in a way that you maybe couldn't with dreams.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I'm just kind of a naturally curious person. So when I have the opportunity to visit with somebody who knows something about something that I know nothing or very little about, I'm like, ooh, tell me more about that.
And it's becoming more popular. I just saw an article that was written about how tarot in particular is helping people gain insight and clarity onto like themselves. And I think that's ultimately what it's for. I think a lot of people want people to tell their future. And I think it's not that simple, because we all create the life that we love, right? We all like make choices each day. And I think at the end of the day, it's about what choices are we making. And I think sometimes one big thing that is a lifelong thing And I think at a certain point, once you really understand and accept this, it becomes easier, is that the choices that we make have to be in alignment with what we say and what we say we want and what we think we want. Like that all has to be in alignment, and that's when you can move forward. So I think a lot of times when people, especially when they're first starting out into trying to manifest or create things in their life, they don't see the ways that sometimes their words or their actions are going against what they say they want or what they think they want, right? Like for me, like I said, I bounced all around from political science to accounting, back and forth, and then I settled on writing. And that was mainly because a friend of mine, divine intervention, right? That's another part of it. Divine intervention says, my friend comes and says, I want you to be a writer. And I didn't know that that was a possibility. Like, I didn't even know that that's something I could have done because I wasn't exposed to that. Even though I read, like, it just didn't make sense in my mind. It was not something I thought about. But after my friend told me this, I looked back in my journals and I had written, like, I wish I could just write all day long and get paid to do that. And it was like, I had already said that, but because of everything that society says, like, you have to be successful and you have to, like, make money and all this stuff, I was disconnected from that passion that I clearly had.
That's amazing. So when you were younger, you had dreamed and written and journaled about how you would love to write all day, and then you stifled that. You forgot all about that dream. And then
Or compartmentalized it, not even like stifled it, but just like said to myself, that is this part of my life, right? And it's not the professional part of my life. That's more for my personal gain or my personal stuff. But the thing is integrating all of that.
Yeah. I love that. Did you ever get any insight from your friend on what made them point that out to you?
Yes, I did actually. Like, I was in Atlanta for the holiday and I was with my friend who was there for kind of sad reasons, but we were reminiscing. And I had said to them, like, what was it that made you say that? And she's like, well, you always, it was MySpace. She's like, you had this MySpace blog that you would, like, always write these, like, detailed stories about what was going on in your day. And you made it sound so interesting, even though it would just be you, like, at work selling sunglasses. Like, she's like, I always read them and, like, anticipated getting the new updates and stuff like that. So it's like, I thought you just had a talent for it. So it's nice how the universe will, like, give you a mirror, give you something to reflect yourself back at you so that you can see yourself more clearly.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, I don't know why it's so hard for us to see it clearly, but yeah, we
I
definitely
can
need
tell
that.
you why. I mean, I think society counts on that, right? There's a whole industry that counts on us being disconnected from ourselves, being disconnected from our purpose, feeling like we're not good enough, so we can buy this to be better. And, at the end of the day, it's really capitalism. It's like, take this pill to feel better, buy these clothes to look better. But it's like, well, what about what I already have? Like, isn't this good enough? And if we're not, if we're raised in a way that is, we're not taught those things, then we're just perpetuated until one day. And I do think that eventually one day we all have this kind of realization, and then we again are faced with a choice. It's like, I know these things now, and then, like, I have a choice, like the red pill or blue pill in the Matrix. It's like I can choose to understand this and make choices that are in line with myself, or continue to make choices that go against me and what I'm feeling and undermine my sense of humanness.
Wow. Yeah. It is odd. I've had the opportunity to live in a couple countries other than the US, and one of those countries was Panama, which I loved because I'm a warm weather beach girl. So I
Yes.
don't know what I'm doing in Kansas, but whatever.
Getting swept up in a tornado. That's what
Yeah.
you're doing.
Oh, don't worry. We have earthquakes now too.
Oh, perfect.
They're small, but it's cool. Um, yeah, and it's a third world country, and it's just so different than America, and it's just insane. And I remember because I was pretty young. I was in fourth, fifth, and sixth grade when we lived there. And but my dad was like telling a friend when we got back to the US, or maybe we were visiting or something, he's like, yeah, in Panama, like it's just so simple. And he's like, in America, I don't understand. I go to the store to buy ketchup and there's an entire aisle of ketchup. And I've got this size and this flavor and this type of bottle. And he's like, and I stand there forever trying to figure out what I want. In Panama, you go to the store, you need ketchup. There's the little spot for ketchup. You grab it, you're done. Like there just isn't all the, yeah, that's just one very abstract example of the simplicity of mindset and everything, because not everybody's trying to be the best ketchup.
Right, right. Or I don't even know, like ketchup is funny because it's like, exactly, it's like, what is even the difference between all of those ketchup? Like, it's all the same.
Yeah.
Ketchup is ketchup.
So silly. So yeah, I love that the choices that we make. So you said everything needs to be in alignment. You know, the words we say, the thoughts we think, the actions we take, those are what's going to get you to the life that you love, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
awesome. So what other tips have you learned on your journey?
Yeah, like just like I was saying about the things already kind of being there, the clues already being there in your life. What I'm realizing more and more, and I was having a conversation with another friend because we're working on a script together, and he's in school, and he was saying how he wants to build his social skills.
Hmm.
Um, and for him to do that, he's going to have tangible outcomes or things that he can measure it by, right? Which is like includes like talking to the people at the gym or things like that. And I was just kind of like, yes, like we need to have social skills, totally. Like, but I was like, you don't lack social skills at all. That's not what you lack. And the thing about it is, 9 times out of 10, I'm not saying that it's impossible, but those connections or um, those moments of inspiration are going to come from the people who are already in your circle, right? So like with my film, I remember we were in the studio recording a song with my actress, and I mean that in itself was such a dream come true. Like I had been thinking about this song for the past 3 years and wanting to do something with it for my movie, and to then be gifted by the universe in some weird way, um, a girl that I had asked to do this role 3 years ago who rejected it and came back around and she did it, and she sang this song for the movie. Like it was just like more than I could ever have asked for or dreamed of in a way. Um, and I was talking to my producer and my behind the scenes person and editor, and I was like, I went to this workshop and they said that the only way really to get into film festivals is to kind of know somebody, because the chances are of me applying kind of off the street are very slim to none. Not saying it's not possible. The current job that I have at DreamWorks, I got applying off the street, which kind of never happens. But they were saying to me, and they kind of reassured me, like, you're doing all the things that you're supposed to be doing. Like, you're trying to get your film out there. You're taking those steps. You're recording this song. You're working on it and you're trying to get it out there and you're talking to people about it. They're like, the people, it's already happening, and so to speak, right? It's already happening in your circle of friends or whatever. Those vibes are already out there. The vibrations are going out. And just, was it today or yesterday? I think it was yesterday. There's a guy who has been a part of my film journey from close to the beginning, not 3 years ago, but from the beginning of this pandemic. He offered a grant to Black creatives during the time of all the protests and things like that, and was one of the first grants that we got, and really kind of kicked us off. And then he was able to help us out again with an event space for our screening. And I just happened to like reply to his Instagram story and say like LOL or something like that. And he writes back like, hey, how's it going with the film? And I'm like, oh, this is what's going on. This is what I'm doing. And it's going really well and yada, yada. And he's like, oh, and I'm telling him about the distribution and how I'm, trying to get it into, I have a couple of festivals in mind. And he's like, oh, I know 2 people at that festival. Let me reach out to them right now, and it's like, that person was there this whole time. Right.
That's amazing.
And I was thinking like I would have to go out and try to find someone and do all this extra work. But at the end of the day, that's one thing that I'm learning is that like it's already happening. It's already in your sphere. You just kind of have to be open to it and make sure those actions are aligned. Because when you're doing that, right? So imagine if I hadn't been, so where I'm at with my film right now, I yesterday had sent out an email to my VFX artist. This person's going to be donating their services to me, but I had been dropping the ball on getting them a list of my notes. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to get my list of notes back. I'm back from Atlanta. I'm going to do this on Monday morning. I'm going to do this on Monday morning. Do all these things that I have to do on my list. And so if I wasn't doing those things, then I wouldn't be able to say to him, this is what I'm doing, X, Y, and Z. Right. And so if I'm just like, oh, film's going good, I'm not really doing anything, then there's no room for that conversation to happen about, his friends at Tribeca or his interest in becoming an executive producer. Right. So if you're doing that work, those things will come for sure.
Absolutely. And you touched on being open to it as well. So often, if we're closed off to something, the opportunity may basically hit us in the face and we're just like, oh, no, I didn't even, get out of my way. Like, this is a nuisance. And it's like,
Yeah.
that was your thing. So yeah, sometimes people would say, oh yeah, she wanted to make a movie and she moved to LA and now she's directed a film. She's lucky. Like,
I'm gonna tell you right now, that's not luck. I mean, I am lucky. No, I'll be real. I am lucky.
Mm-hmm.
We all are lucky, right? Like I'm blessed to have health, to have, a semi-supportive family, like, my mom, my grandmother, even though they weren't really sure and they didn't really think that it was a good move for me to do it. I remember my grandmother, she was like, oh, I saw your tarot reading, like the notes that you wrote from your tarot reading. And she's like, I just want you to know that I support you. So I am lucky to have that love surrounding me. But at the end of the day, and I tell this story all the time, I came to LA with 2.5 weeks worth of clothing, like one little carry-on suitcase, and honestly, $8.75. Like that's all I had to my name. And it was because I asked for signs, asked, God, the universe, however you want to categorize it, what I should do, and prayed for signs of what my next steps should be, and followed that. I told my family, I said, I think I have a feeling that I need to be there on Monday because I'm going to get called for a job interview. I had been back in Atlanta like less than a week. And my friend bought my ticket. So yes, that's lucky. My friend bought my ticket to LA. And I was in a relationship at the time, which is what my movie is about, with this person. And it was a failed relationship, but everything else really lined up for me. But it was putting forth that effort, right? So like actually doing that work to apply for the jobs. I remember I got there on a Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, I was applying for every job that I saw on Craigslist that was somewhat connected to what I wanted to do. And I got the call on Monday, just how I thought I might, and I had an interview the next day. And it was, even though it was for an internship, it wasn't even like a paid position. I was like, but I'm not doing anything. Let me just see what this is about. And again, the being open, I was just open to it. It turned into a full-time job,
Nice.
which which was my first job in LA that I worked for a year or so. So, it's just exactly being open, but also putting in that work. And some of it is luck, and then you have that kind of trifecta, it's not, there's no one size fits all. There's no one simple recipe for it. All of those things work in concert you know, um, just like how our thoughts and our actions and our words need to be working together. That's what gives you the momentum and forward movement.
Absolutely. Yeah, this aligns very well with everything that I talk to my audience about. So we're right
I
on.
mean, it aligns because it's true. That's the thing. Like, I think there's people out here that are naysayers or skeptics, and there's like funny memes about like who hurt you, like what didn't work for you in your life that you need to kind of unpack and resolve. Because I think, again, once you just start doing that healing work and that realization, you have the choice. Like every day we make a choice.
Mm.
And I think it's that simple, but it's also very complicated. Like, because we sometimes fall into a pattern, or like, I was raised to do it this way, even though it might be the wrong way. Right.
Yeah.
So it's hard to break those patterns. But once we start at least trying to heal, the universe, I won't say rewards you, but the universe responds to that, because it is on one level as simple as vibrations and simple as the cells in our body,
Yeah, definitely. And that several years ago, if somebody would have said something like that, I would have been like, what? But like now I'm just like, yep, 100%. Like,
Yeah. And I'm so glad for a platform like yours where people can really connect with that message, because I think, especially now during COVID, people need to know that. We were talking a little bit earlier about the thriving through COVID, right?
Mhm.
And I remember when it all was going down. So I had a surgery at the beginning of this year
Mm.
that it wasn't like super intense or anything. I mean, it was intense, but it wasn't like a long involved process. I was in and out of the hospital in a day. It wasn't like an overnight stay or anything like that. However, there was a lot of kind of like energetic clearing that was being done. And then I remember waking up from that surgery and being like, okay, go time, like time to get to work. And I remember in the hospital seeing the news, and it was like coronavirus is in China and it's coming. And basically, that's basically what they were saying. And I was like, oh God, I'm going to get coronavirus in the hospital. Like, like that thought. But it was really right before, that was the end of January. And, 2 months later, we were stay at home.
Yeah.
Another really interesting thing happened right around that time at the beginning of this year, the day before my surgery. Kobe Bryant died in a helicopter
Mm.
crash,
Yeah.
which was really, really weird and kind of personal being in LA, because the city obviously loves Kobe. But the odd thing about it was that the day before that, I was driving to IKEA and I saw a helicopter. And I was like, oh, look at that helicopter. It reminds me of the time that Kobe Bryant came to my job and flew his helicopter and landed on the helipad. And it was like such a big deal. Everyone was out trying to like take photos of it and all this stuff, because he did this animated short film about basketball. And I think he ended up winning an Oscar. So I had that kind of weird connection to him in a way. Even though I didn't meet him or have anything to do with him when he came to visit. And then that Sunday he passed away. And then the next day I was going into surgery.
Wow.
And then, within 2 days I was back at work. It was totally fine. Felt really good. February, I went on a retreat to Joshua Tree to the desert. And March it was lockdown.
Mm.
And for the first couple of weeks, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I really wanted to make my film this year. I told myself that this is going to be the year that I do it. I was gearing up for it after the holiday, after my surgery. That was a big thing. And at some point I think it was also in February, I went to an event for this group called Young Entertainment Activists. And I met this film director, Casey Lemons, who directed Harriet and directed Eve's Bayou, and all these amazing films. And I just had the opportunity to ask her, what advice would you give to someone who wants to be like you? And she's just said to me, if you have a story, if you have something, don't let anything stop you.
Mm.
That was her advice. And I was like, oh, that's such bullshit. Fuck you. Right? Because it's like that whole idea of it being a trite thing to say to someone, like, that's not what we're looking for. But and I'll share this, I'm sorry if this is like TMI or inappropriate, but it was like the first week of lockdown had gone by and people were having like virtual parties on the internet and things like that. And I remember being at a party one night and I was really high on an edible. My film is called Edible. And I just like started to get all this kind of these flashes of things I needed to do. I couldn't sleep. I was just like tossing and turning. I had all these ideas and I was like, okay, like it was to the point that I had to like get up, get a pen and paper and write things down because things were happening. And I said to myself, okay, you have to make Edible. This is exactly what she meant when she said, don't let anything stop you. Mm-hmm. And here you are being faced with that, this kind of seemingly unsurmountable obstacle. And I thought about, the legacy of my family, like after my surgery, a lot of like, ideas of my ancestry were coming up. And I was like, my ancestors have not come this far. They have struggled this whole time and they're still struggling. This is not a new position for you as a Black woman. You've been dealing with trauma and tragedy and making it through for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, if not hundreds of thousands of years. So I was like, I owe it to myself and to everyone who came before me to try to do something. And here are the two things I know I'm going to need. I'm going to need a video. I'm going to need a logo. Who can I turn to for these things? And within 3 days, within the 24 hours, once I had that thought of like, okay, here are my next steps, here are concrete actions I can take that will get me closer to where I want to go. And I know that that is exactly where I say I want to go. And I'm doing exactly what I say I want to do. It unfolded within 24 hours. I had someone to do my video, and that was like March 26th-ish, like the end of March. And I said to myself, I have a newsletter. I was like, okay, I only send my newsletter out 4 times a year. I had done one for New Year's. And I was like, okay, April 1, I want to send out a newsletter. I want to have my campaign. I want to launch it. And this COVID is going to actually be a key in that. COVID is going to actually be the reason why it succeeds instead of the reason why it fails. Because I want to help people who I know are struggling right now, right? And so that's what I was alluding to earlier when I was saying that yes, we can create the life that we love for ourselves, but it has to be about something more than that, right? Like, I think, to get all like into astrology, but we're entering this phase called the Age of Aquarius. And to me, that really means that we can no longer afford, and I think we're seeing that with COVID too, is that we can no longer afford to be selfish in our thinking. And we cannot just say like, okay, I want to create the life I want for myself and screw everybody else, right? It's like, how can I create the life that I want for myself? How can we all co-create the life that we all want together? And realizing that we all do decide in the end what we allow, what can work for us, what doesn't work for us, what our boundaries are, and how we can move. Like we have that power innately, but it's about tapping into it and rediscovering it, because I think as children we're born knowing that, right? And I think that's why, like, a lot of times, especially like with supernatural abilities, quote unquote supernatural, I think they're natural abilities, but whatever. Children will experience things more, right? Because they're more open and they kind of have, they don't have the same limitations that adults have. They haven't unlearned how to feel and use all of their senses, which I think is what happens over time, is that we ignore parts of our sensory gifts. As we get older, we get trained to turn those off. And then there's a moment that we can retrain ourselves to turn those senses back on. I think that's really where we're at as a collective through COVID, right? We're at this precipice of like saying, okay, this is it. We can turn all of our senses on. We can have the compassion for everyone. We can create and co-create the future right now. I do believe that.
Yeah. There's definitely a shift. And it really does feel like something's coming. And I'm very excited of whatever that's coming. But I think 2020, I was so optimistic for 2020, and I think so many people were, and the roaring 20s, and I got a super cute little flapper dress and was so excited for New Year's and set out all these goals. And one thing that was not on my goal sheet at all, and people had talked to me about it, and I said, no, that's too much work. That takes too much time, was this podcast.
Exactly. And
And
look at you now.
yeah, and this is, I call it my COVID baby, because I was so active and so go, go, go every night. I had to, what dance class am I going to go take? I love ballroom and Latin dancing. And so I chose a not very pandemic friendly hobby. So all of a sudden,
Uh-huh.
my evenings were very, very open. And I was like, well, shoot, what do I do?
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. And it's funny, like you're saying, people had already talked to you about it. They had already planted that seed. It was already there. It wasn't like a brand new thing that you're just like, I'm going to do this now because I'm in COVID. Those seeds had already been planted and now they had time to bloom.
right.
And I
Yeah.
think we all are seeing ourselves or have been able to get a little bit, not everybody, unfortunately, but a vast majority of us have been given time to see what has bloomed during this time.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm just so excited to see. I mean, look at everything that everyone collectively has come through. And not unscathed, but I'm like, all right, if we can survive that, we're gonna be okay. Like, let's do better. Let's work together. Let's be that collective. We really need unity right now. Everything is so divisive. So I'm hoping that we see some more unity as we move forward as a human race.
Absolutely. Yeah, we need it. We
Yeah,
do need it.
for sure. So definitely, I want to hear more about your movie. So it was how many years that you were thinking about it?
Yeah, so in another incubation period. So after I started working at DreamWorks in 2016, and shortly after that, the company got bought out by NBC,
Oh, okay.
which was another kind of big disruption. And I think that kind of energy just follows me wherever I go. That's why I was saying I'm sure the internet will go out today, but I'm a disruptor. What can I say? But it was a time where people were getting laid off. I was fortunate enough not to be laid off, and I was fortunate enough to be in this position where I didn't have a lot going on. I would go to work every day and I would work, but I had a lot of free time at work to write. So I spent a lot of time writing at work, writing after work. And I wrote the script 3 years ago and I started looking for actors. I just started doing the things that I thought made sense for someone trying to get a short film made, trying to enact all the things I had learned in film school. And so I started on it then. Another one of my actresses, I remember looking at the casting sites, like Backstage, and I saw her and I was printing out like people's profiles and making notes like a director. And I remember writing on her profile that I printed, and I found it a few months ago where I had written this note. I wrote Jasmine, which is the character's name. And I was like, I want this person to play this role. And she did. Here it is 3 years later. And she was super supportive then. She's like, yeah, just like let me know what you need. And I was like, okay, cool. And we weren't super close, but we just kept in touch through social media and stuff. And she was in my film, like again with like the other, I went to different events. So my film is about the true story of when I moved to LA and I was dating a Saudi Arabian girl. And we tried an edible marijuana cookie one night
Oh.
after like a kind of rough week, right? Like she had gotten into this fight with her cousin. I'm putting cousin in quotation marks because that's kind of the premise of this story. You'll have to watch. I don't want to ruin it, but we try this cookie and she freaks out and is like, you have to take me to the hospital right now. She calls her dad from Saudi Arabia. And essentially, I think she, like, because I can't understand, she's speaking Arabic, but like the universe kind of like just aligns again, once again, like there was these people in the lobby that I had seen a few nights before in the lobby that like ended up helping us that night, and helping her call her family and helping us get a taxi to the hospital. And I just thank God for that, right? Because I don't know what I would have done if those people weren't there to help, you know? So that's what the story is about. And I remember, and because it's such a specific thing, like Arabic speaking actors, I had 3 Arabic speaking actors in my film. So I was, trying to find the actors who would play, my taxi driver, Jasmine, who had already had somebody in mind for that. But, you just never know. So you have to have backups. And the lead role in particular, because it was an Arabic speaking role and they had to feel comfortable playing in a same-sex relationship on screen, which is like a big taboo culturally. Pretty much no one was interested in it. 3 years ago, everyone's like, definitely not. I think there might have been one person that I talked to about it that ended up actually being cast. I think I met them in 2018, and then they were actually in the role, and then they dropped out. And then the girl that I had met in 2017, by the grace of God, like literally went to, again, going to events, just kind of being out there and being open. I went to an event through work, and a guy there was Saudi Arabian, and I was like, I have to talk to this person. And I just laid it out. I was like, this is my project. And he was like, cool, I want to help you. And nothing really happened immediately, right? Because they were super busy. And then COVID hits and they're like, oh, I want to know more, like what's going on. And then, they donated to the project. They were, I guess, putting the word out. And then my lead actress dropped out and I reached out to him. I'm like, hey, I really need someone like, I'm going, it was like 2 weeks or 2 to 3 weeks before filming. So I filmed in August, and like August 1, my lead actress had dropped out.
Oh, no.
And it was, but at the same time, I just had faith. I felt like things were going to work out. And I honestly felt, and again, it's true all the time, is that like everything happens for a reason. And I didn't look at it as an obstacle. I thought, okay, this is a blessing in disguise. How do I make this work for me? And I reached out to him and said, hey, I need somebody. And he was like, I have someone who's interested. And another person recommended the same person. And I was like, oh my God, all signs are leading toward this person who rejected this very notion 3 years ago. It's really crazy to me how this could come back, but I'm open to receiving, like that. You just have to stay open, and thank God that happened, because again, and now I have this song with my actress. The performances are amazing, like really, really, really stellar, something I could never again have dreamed of being a part of. And thankfully it was COVID. Thankfully, like all these things had to line up and had to align for this to happen.
That's amazing. So at this point, is it out? Like,
It's not out yet. I'm still working on it. Had a meeting with my sound designer last night, and have started an email exchange with my VFX artist. Tonight, I'm going and working with my executive producer on the song and kind of trying to see what it, get the vibe for it under the actual movie, and just step by step and trying to get it hopefully into festivals. I'm gonna put it out there the beginning of next year. I think I'm gonna try to get it into festivals. So be on the lookout.
Yeah, I'll be like, I know her.
Mhm. Oh, it's funny. I have a second job too, and they had a thing in Kansas that was actually canceled because of COVID. And one of the museums there, they're doing this big installation called Four Worlds. So look out for that for sure, because it'll be really cool.
Nice. Do you remember what city it was in? It was probably Kansas City.
I think it was Kansas
Yeah.
City.
I'm in actually the largest city in the state of Kansas called Wichita, because the bulk of the population of Kansas City is actually in Missouri.
Weird. No, well, it's I actually don't really know. I
Yeah.
know that it's like some museum in Kansas. I don't know. It's a big museum. I don't know. Kansas Museum of Art. I don't know if that's a thing.
That's
I,
awesome.
I have no idea.
Yeah. And what was it called again?
Four Worlds.
Four Worlds. Okay. And that's the name of the exhibition in the
Yes.
museum. Okay.
And I think it's coming. I think they said 2022 now, and it's like a big like centennial celebration of something else that's happening. So it should be like even bigger than it was when they were going to do it this year. So
yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. So, you're gonna get it in festivals, and then what do you see as next? I know, like right now, your dream is get this project that you've been working on for 3 years, but then is there anything in the back of your mind of, okay, once this is up and running, here's what's next?
Yeah, and the thing is, you have to already have those things going. I'm working on a feature with one of my best friends about growing up in LaGrange, Georgia, which is where we both went to high school and worked at the McDonald's. Growing up as two queer kids in the rural South from completely different backgrounds. I think he's from Alabama, and me from New York City. So there's a lot of complementary things going on there. It's called Apollo and Artemis. Um, Also working on like TV pilots with another friend of mine about growing, kind of being in college in Atlanta. So I have a number of projects that I'm working. I have a whole list, and I'm just like, okay, trying to set the like 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year goals and trying to get it all written at least, and then see how I can go about producing all of it.
Absolutely. That's so exciting. Yeah. So everyone will have to go follow Kandis on social media so you can stay in tune with where she's at with all of her projects. And so tell us where people can connect with you, and be sure to talk about the GoFundMe.
I will do both of those things. Thank you so much. So you can follow the film at Edible the Film at Gmail, on Instagram, also at Gmail, but on Instagram, I think that's probably the best thing to follow. You can also follow me at Kandis.with.a.k on Instagram. But I'm going to be updating Edible a lot more. And also our GoFundMe is still active. We're looking to raise about $8,000 for the rest of our post-production. So that includes the sound design and the color correction and the subtitling that'll need to happen, and all the other things that you don't think about that go into a movie after it's done filming. Yeah, all that stuff costs money. And also a big part of it for me, like I said, is about giving back. So I started the campaign to give people in my community jobs who had lost jobs due to the pandemic. And I was able to hire about 20 people, which is nice. But especially since, what that stimulus check that we got was like totally gone, right? So just trying to keep up that momentum of keeping people in my community employed and also inspired to continue creating, because the pandemic has a lot of mental effects on people. And I think hopefully you all who are watching and people who are just kind of following my story, can be inspired to continue to tell their own stories and not give up, even though it might be hard. Yeah, so that's happening on our GoFundMe. You can find that through our bio links on Instagram. I'm happy to send that over to you too as well. But yeah, it's been quite a journey, and I hope you all follow along and just see where it goes from here, you know.
Yeah. Well, you're very passionate and it's very inspiring. And so, yes, that's very exciting. I think I did follow you on Instagram and I believe I have all the links. I will double check and make sure that the links are posted in the replay for anybody interested.
Thank you
And
so much.
yeah, Candice, I always like to ask my guests, what is a daily non-negotiable for you?
That's a great, great question. And I think the one thing that I've always kind of come back to is like kind of a daily moment of like prayer and reflection and kind of gratitude, and also a daily tarot pull, just to kind of ground and center myself in the day and get ready, and just check in with my energy for the day and see what might come up.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being here with us this evening.
Thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, thank you everyone for joining us on the Create a Life You Love video podcast. I would absolutely love to connect with you one on one and dig deep into a challenge you are facing during a 15-minute complimentary clarity call. And so, head over to the link in the show notes and go ahead and book that before they're all filled up. And next week, we'll be chatting with Janice Isserman, a speaker, facilitator, instructor, and mother. And her unique discipline agnostic approach has helped thousands of people navigate their body issues through education and movement techniques to full body sustainability. So, also for all my fellow educator friends out there, or if you know any educators, I am partnering with a fellow coach who is a former teacher, and we're offering a virtual retreat for educators on Sunday, December 20th from 3 to 5 p.m. Central Time. So, head over to the link in the show notes for more information and to save your seat. And I will see you at the same time and place next Tuesday. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a good night.